So I rise today to support Bill 201, the employment standards. And unlike most of my debates here, I'm actually going to rely more on stories than data. I think many of my colleagues have presented some really good data and statistics on how increasing the minimum wage and protecting tips will help Albertans. But I wanted to share a little of my story because I used to work getting paid minimum wage. And I feel like we're almost having a competition on this side of the aisle of who made the least amount of money, but I think it's me. I was making $5.90 an hour working as a server. Too much. And at that time, working as a server was actually part of a minimum wage differential because servers were perceived to not require as much minimum wage as other workers, which I can tell you annoyed the pants off me, Madam Speaker. I relied on my tips to survive during that time, and it was really only when the NDP was in government in 2015 that they got rid of the wage differential for servers, and I can tell you that I am sure many servers were very grateful for that. Wage differentials, Madam Speaker, just breed a lack of awareness of how hard people work. It doesn't matter what the work is. If you're all working as hard, you should get the same amount of money. And I echo some of my comments from my colleague from Calgary Edgemont talking about the wage discrepancy between men and women in this country, which I have also felt acutely throughout my career. However, I will say during this time that I worked as a server that my tips are what made the difference for me. They helped me pay rent, they helped me buy a car, they helped me go back to school to get my graduate degrees, they helped me survive and stay sane, and so much more. I would not have been able to do those jobs if I wasn't getting tips or if my tips weren't protected. I started serving in my early 20s when I was traveling and I needed to make some extra money, but it was always a job that I turned back to when times were hard, when I had a hard time finding a job, when my rent went up and I needed to make a second income to make ends meet. Serving was always there for me, Madam Speaker, and for me, serving was a part-time gig. It was not my career goal, you know, grizzly bear biologist and everything. It was kind of what I wanted to do instead. But I will say that during my time working as a server, I met many career servers who required a job serving because those kinds of jobs gave them the flexibility that they needed for their family or to take care of children or aging parents or whatever they needed to support their spouse in their career. And so there are many people who are working in minimum wage jobs as a career. And I'm sharing this with you, Madam Speaker, and with all the other members here because the members opposite seem to really emphasize that minimum wage earners are at the beginning of their careers or they're just young people and it's not for a very long period of time, and the idea is that you work minimum wage for a short period of time and then you advance in your career. And that may be true for some people, Madam Speaker, but it's not true for everyone. And the reality is that we are here in this House to represent the voices of all Albertans. So if we are going to have a debate about wages and the other people, the other members across the aisle are going to talk about how very few people in Alberta are making minimum wage, I don't care. Those people are making minimum wage, and this bill could change their lives. And we are here to do that work. The only reason I stayed serving for as long as I did was because the tips were so good, especially if you had the best shifts in the busy places. Workers deserve to keep those tips because they're the ones who have earned them. One of the biggest changes that I've seen now between the time that I was a server, which admittedly $5.90 was a long time ago in Alberta history, one of the biggest changes is the use of debit and credit cards and tapping, and how not very many people are using cash to pay for bills anymore. With this technology, the practice of tipping has also expanded to include coffee shops and other over-the-counter businesses that you wouldn't necessarily have tipped in the same way before. But what hasn't changed is how important and critical those tips are to the people who make them. And protecting those tips as the technology changes, Madam Speaker, our legislation should also change. We need to keep with the times. So today, leaving my own personal story behind, this bill is fighting to put more money back into the pockets of Albertans. Today, I represent a constituency that is largely based on tourism sector, and many jobs in the tourism sector are minimum wage jobs. They're servers, they're hospitality workers, they are cashiers, they're working for different companies, maybe only for a few months, maybe for a few years, but a lot of people in the Bow Valley are making minimum wage. And whether they're making tips or not, they're trying to live in some of the most expensive communities in Alberta. It is so frustrating for me, Madam Speaker, to hear the Minister of Children's Services talk about how rent is going down. Well, I can assure you, in Canmore and Banff, rent is not going down. It is going up. We are losing people in our community because of the lack of affordable housing, which I've spoken about in this House so many times. So let me go over that one more time. How expensive is it to live in Canmore, Madam Speaker? The average rent is $2,000 a month and rising for a one-bedroom apartment. The median condo purchase price is $700,000, and the median home purchase price is $1.4 million. Our communities in the Bow Valley are so expensive that people can't afford to stay, and we lose them. And at the same time, the people in our community who are making minimum wage are actually the foundations of our community. They are serving the restaurants, they are making the coffee, they are making the beds, they are the cashiers at the Shoppers Drug Mart and at the Safeway where people are buying their groceries on Friday for their weekend in Canmore. They are essential workers in our town. Our town would not be what it is without the minimum wage earners, and I am eternally grateful to every single one of them, Madam Speaker, because most of them are not working one job, they're working three. Three minimum wage jobs just to stay in Canmore. They somehow managed to be parents at the same time. I don't know how they managed to juggle that. But they are doing it, but they're needing to work 60, 70 hours a week. That's not a life, Madam Speaker. What if their minimum wage was higher? What if they could make just a little bit more money every month? Well, what that would turn into, Madam Speaker, is more time to be in the community, in stores, sharing their newfound wealth with other businesses. And we start to see that we can develop a community that is stronger and more active and more robust and supporting each other just by increasing the minimum wage and creating allowances for people's tips to be protected so they can rely on them for the robust economic contribution that they are. Wages have not increased under the UCP despite massive cost of living increases, and we now have the lowest minimum wage in the country. I'm ashamed and a little bit embarrassed by that, Madam Speaker. I agree that being a small business is hard, and there are many costs to balance. One of the members suggested that we hadn't consulted with businesses on this bill. I would like to take an opportunity to correct that and say that we have consulted with businesses on this bill. But I think one of the things that the members opposite neglect to consider is the business's reputation and how their reputation for treating their workers fairly can result in increased business. So, for example, there are businesses in the Bow Valley where management is keeping tips from servers. And as soon as that becomes broad public knowledge, the community boycotts those businesses. Those businesses lose a reputational consistency. People don't want to serve those businesses. Conversely, businesses that have a reputation for paying their staff well or having lots of benefits or distributing their tips according to how they're earned see more business in the local community. And so it's not fair to talk about the cost to businesses without talking about business reputation as well. Tip protection is in place in 7 other Canadian provinces. This is not new, some crazy fandangled left idea. This is something that most of the country is doing. And again, Alberta is falling behind because this government doesn't want to actually make the right choices. This bill will bring more money to the pockets of Albertans. It's a good thing for Alberta. It's a good thing for businesses, and all members should vote in favour of it. Thank you.